What's going on, guys and gals? This is Autotech, and today I'm going to show you an option for carrying additional fuel on your Tiger 800. This will kind of apply to any adventure bike though, and it's more of a showing you options rather than a how-to. So why would you want to carry extra fuel? Well, because if you're planning a long trip, hint, hint, wink, wink, there can be times where you don't have service. For example, one of the longest stretches happens to be in my country, and I believe it was like 407 kilometers or something like that without service. So no gas station here, 407 kilometers, so like 300 miles. Another gas station. So that's a pretty long stretch. Now, I think the bike could make it because when I'm just cruising around, I can get about 400 out of it. But the road that stretch is on happens to be gravel and mud. So you get stuck, you're screwed. You're going to burn fuel and that's it. So there's dozens of options for carrying extra fuel. One of my original ideas was to try and get a Rotopax in between here. A lot of people can do it if they have the Givy like quick release setup, but I don't have that, and just measuring all their stuff out, there was no way for me to do that. So I'm gonna put something else behind there, which I think I'll be happy with. Another option is some people get these like instruction tubes for tractors, and then they'll put one of those MSR fuel bottles in there and mount like one or two in there, and that's cool. It works. It's a very cheap option because, you know, the tube is like $8, and then the MSR fuel bottle is like 22. But then you're kind of using up that whole space, and then you're only carrying 2 liters. So it was kind of like, that's a lot of work just for nothing. So Givy makes a bunch of brackets that you can, like, you know, you bolt them into here and then you can carry a fuel bottle. I didn't really like the way that looked, and then you're drilling, I think it was like 12 holes into your bags. So I was like, oh, that's a lot of chances for a leak. And I think it would interfere with all of this. So then I found the Touratech option, which is called the Zega Pro base plate. And they've got a whole whack of different accessories that you can put on these. And that kind of appealed to me because it was like, okay, cool. So now I mount this, and then I can get a 2-liter fuel bottle holder, and I can get a separate attachment that clips onto this, and it'll hold MSR bottles. You can get a whole line of different things. So I was like, okay, cool. This option was a touch more expensive just because all the little pieces start to add up. Like the base plates were like $40, which isn't bad, whatever. But then like the fuel bottle holders with straps was like, it was like $35 or something. And then the fuel bottles themselves were like, I think like $28. So it's like, you know, you start getting, yeah, that starts adding up pretty quick here. And, you know, so, but for longevity purposes, I'm kind of happy I went this route. I finished up this side. This wasn't the original location that I wanted to do it, but whatever. I mean, it had to work, and I had to take a step back and think about it. If I'm going on a trip like that and I'm going to Tuktoyaktuk, you know, hint, hint, wink, wink, I'm not going to have a passenger on, so not being able to fold down this peg or having them be able to put their feet on it, that's whatever, right? So let's move on. The way that these work is it's basically just kind of a spring-loaded little tab. You pop them in there. The first couple of goes is actually it's pretty tough to pop this in, so it's like rather secure, and just like the leverage points with your hand is tough, but as you can see, I got it no problem. Once this pops up, you know that it's in place, and they do have a set screw that you can put in there. And then I'm not going to put all the straps on it just yet, but then it holds the fuel bottle. Now, this is a bit of a disclaimer here. This install is permanent. Like, you can't put this plate on and then, oh, at another date, oh, I want to move it 2 inches, because you're going to have 4 holes in your bag. And like I seal them once I put them in, so they're there, they're permanent, they're not moving. So measure about 65 times and drill once, if you know what I mean. Like I sat on this for probably about 2 weeks because my original idea was right about here, but then I just found like by the time I was able to like get it to clear all this stuff, you know, I was hanging below the bag by about 3 inches, and I really didn't like that option. Like, you know, you see how far it's hanging down there. And then I was like, well, crap, that was like pretty well my only go-to. Then I was thinking I might go on the side of the bag, the top bag. But then by the time I was able to like clear the lid, I mean, I was like at the end of the bag. And this is already kind of a, like it's set up here and a lot of the weight is already that way. So then you go and add 4 liters of fuel hanging off the back. That's a lot of weight trying to twist this thing this way, especially if you're going down a gravel road. So then I was like, well, crap, this sucks. And I was like, oh, well, I don't ever put anything on top of here. Sometimes I got a bag that I'll put back here and then strap it to here. And I was like, great, I'll put it like this. That'll work perfect. And then I can open the lid, you know, get the lid open. You know, if I wanted to fill it, I could even just set it like that and fill it while I'm filling the gas tank. Sweet. But now you got a jerry can mounted sideways all the time. Now I know these seals are pretty good because even when they're upright, it's sloshing, but the seals aren't constantly submerged, if you know what I mean. So I'd hate to get halfway to where I'm going, have a fuel light come on and be like, oh, cool, right on, and discover that this thing had been dripping all the time and now I've only got, you know, half a liter in there. So then I was like, okay, well, how about the front of the bag? But then I was kind of torn on it and I was like, oh man, like that sucks. Like now I can't use that peg. So I sat on it for about a week, and that's when I kind of clued in and was like, well, wait a second, what am I actually doing with this thing? Like I'm not actually going to be, you know, having a passenger on there if I'm having these. You know, I'm not going to have these bottles on to commute to work or to go to Edmonton or go to Montana or something like that. Like this is only for long distance type stuff. Like if I'm going to go to the coast, yeah, I'll bring them with. Why not? Extra fuel never hurts. And so that's where I was like, okay, cool. I'll do that there. On this side though, I basically had to be like as far off to the side as I could get. Like right before where the actual bag curves is where I have that first screw. And it works out all right. It's not actually touching the peg. Like, yeah, I can make it touch, but I think while I'm riding, it's not actually going to be hitting it. The right side though, I mean, you got tons of room just because of the way that the exhaust is, so you can be more centered on the bag. That's about really all I have to say about that is take your time, pick a location, think about it, and then get to drilling. Because once you drill those plates in, unless you're good with a TIG welder and know how to repair the bag, it's pretty well permanent. So giving you a quick rundown of my thought process. I had the bags on the bike and I was holding it up there. I taped them on, made sure I got on, that nothing was going to touch me. And then I kind of got a feel for where they needed to be on the bag. And then I sat there and thought about it for a while. So I was kind of happy with that. But, you know, my thought process was basically just about flush with that. And then you got to bring it down just a touch. And the reason I say you got to bring it down just a touch is because when you go to remove this, you have to turn it that little bit of a 1/4 inch or so. So just to match it up with the other side, I'm going to get it a little bit closer to the corner there, just so that it's kind of favoring the outside, nice and symmetrical on each side, so I don't have one like perfectly centered and then one outside. I'm just picky like that. And then you know, you make sure that you got enough room that you could actually like twist this to pop it on and off. And then quick visualization, I mean, you can physically see that that's like 3/4 of an inch up. So that's not going to be an issue there. And then from there, I got a little bit of a mess going on here. So I've already thought about this tons, looked at it tons, already did one side, so I'm going to move through it a little bit quicker. But for you, go grab a coffee or something, think about it, and then come back and check it out. Make sure you're perfectly happy with where it's going. And now, just visually, with it as straight as I think it's going to be, go ahead and mark the holes at the bottom here. You can actually get to those base plate holes for the bottom, and they do show up pretty good. So now that you've got your 2 holes marked pretty good, grab one of these screws, and what I did was I physically checked it, and I was like, okay, it is just ever so slightly smaller than this hole. I wanted to try and keep these holes as absolutely tight as possible, just so that they're easier to seal and you don't have to worry so much about a leak. So then what I did was I found a drill bit that was just ever so slightly smaller than it. This one was a little bit smaller, but I'll show you that afterwards. But don't go just drilling a bunch of holes now. Like I said, you're going to pick just the one, and then we're gonna go from there. And one way to really help yourself out is just to start a little bit there. Don't beat the hell out of it. And now we're going to carefully get that started. If your drill bit starts skipping all over the place, I mean, you gotta be careful, because you're just gonna scratch the hell out of your bag. And if you can't keep your drill bit steady, you're gonna end up with like off-center holes, right? So now that you drilled that hole, you're gonna come back and you're gonna find that it's actually just a touch too small, which is perfect, because now I'm just going to do something really bad for the drill bit, but whatever. I'm going to just take it and just kind of oblong it out a little bit, not a whole lot. And then I'm going to double check it. Oh, we're almost there. So do stuff in little increments, because the tighter you have it on that, the easier it is to seal. All right, now let's double check that. All right, and perfect. Now it's gonna go through. Just a little bit of force to pop it through, but it's there. So now here's where I take the base plate and I kind of set it there, and I pop the one screw through, and then I line it up at that hole, or that felt marker that I had previously done. So now here's where, like, this corner is set in stone now, but now we can fine tune it, see if our felt mark was a little bit off, and if it is, not a huge deal, because now we can pivot it to where we need it. So going from here, we've got 1 3/4, and then we've got 1 3/4. Now spend a little bit of time just to make sure that that is absolutely perfect. I mean, a 1/16 of an inch, I don't think anybody's really going to notice it, you know, from a distance, but it might drive you nuts. So yeah, 3/4, 3/4. So once you've got that exactly where you want it, get your prick punch right in the center of that hole, or as close as you can. Give it a little loving, and now you've got a good mark. I don't know if this will show up on camera, but I mean, I was damn close with my felt mark, so that's good. But I also already did one side, so I kind of have a head start, a practice run. And now we are going to do the same thing again, drill that hole and make it big enough to get that bolt through. So we'll check back in once we're there. Now that you got that hole large enough to pass the screw through, go ahead, pop that in, and now this thing is pretty well in place. So just making sure that the screws are in and it's not like kicked to one side. You can go ahead and as close to the center as possible, start this one. And go ahead and pop the one screw out, don't lose it. And now we can drill that hole. You probably could have guessed what happens next. Go ahead and put the 3 bolts in now. I like to just do it one step at a time. The instructions actually just tell you like make the template and start drilling. Why not just do them one at a time, make sure you're where you need to be, and you're gonna end up with a much better finished product, because if you get one that's out by a 1/16 of an inch, the other 3 aren't gonna line up. So there we go. Now we're gonna pop all these out, drill that final hole. So now that we've got all 4 holes drilled, we're just gonna come in and kind of clean up these edges, and then you can actually just use compressed air to blow those filings out of there. So I mean, I guess I should have covered that at the beginning, that make sure you have nothing in your bags. But I mean, of course you already knew that. But yeah, go ahead and just clean out the bag, make sure that all the burrs and stuff like that are cleaned up off of these holes, and use a little bit of compressed air or like a damp paper towel, clean that out. All right, now that you've got this on here, all the bolts pushed through, make sure you don't lose any of them, and get yourself access to the inside. And now you can see that you've got all your bolts kind of poking through right on. Now here is where, you know, good enough is never good enough for me. So I'm just going to put a little dab of red Loctite on the end of each bolt, and then we're going to check back in after that. So now here's where you might want to put some gloves on just to avoid getting crap all over your hands. The instructions tell you to put the washer and the nut on and then put some silicone behind it. I couldn't do that, so I found that like really tough to do. So just ever so slightly get just a tiny little amount around the bolt holes, like basically around the base of the screw, and do that for all 4 of them. Now that you've got the silicone on there, go ahead and get these washers and nuts started. You might want to hold the backside of the screw so that you don't end up just pushing it right through. And get all 4 of them started. Using a 2mm Allen and a 7mm socket, go ahead and get these snugged down. Now I'm just going to touch this down, and then I'm going to move on to another screw. Do not tighten these up just yet. Go ahead and just get them all touched down, and then we're going to come back. So yeah, get these all touched down. Don't tighten them though, and we're going to check back in. Now that these are all touched down, it's not going to show up on camera, but you're going to notice that you've got that little bit of silicone squirting out from behind the washers. Go ahead and clean all that up before it dries. You know, and you'll probably have a little bit elsewhere. So just go ahead, get this area totally cleaned up, but works somewhat quick. You know, like get this done within about a minute, and then we're going to tighten those down. So just to kind of show you here, I really didn't put anything on those bolts for silicone, and you can see how much I got off once I tightened it all down. So when it comes to silicone, less is definitely more, and more is not better. Now in a crisscross pattern, let's go ahead and tighten these down. The torque for these, again, typical stupid German companies, they're using Newton meters, and they're saying 2 Newton meters. Now that is basically nothing. That is like 20 inch-pounds. So I mean, you are literally just a quarter turn past snug. Like, you know, it's about the same tightness as you would do the screws going into your plastic panels. So you're really not putting any torque on them. Do not strip these out. Now that that's all tightened down, let's go ahead, pick this up. Come on over here. Click that in. And now you can see that's what it's gonna look like without your bottle on there. So like your pegs will go down, absolutely no problem, won't interfere with passengers. You're not even gonna notice it. And then you can take your plate, go ahead and line that up. And like I said, the first couple of times, it's pretty tough to pop in there. And now we're gonna come back to this screw here. It's the bigger one out of the pack. And then you need a really stupid size 2.5 millimeter Allen. It's dumb. Now don't Loctite this or anything, because this is just a set screw so that it doesn't vibrate out of there or anything like that. God damn it. Okay, let's put that in. We'll check back in. All right, a little finesse. We got that in there, and basically just using the short end of this. I mean, just touch it down. Like, it's not actually holding anything. It's just a set screw. For a bigger trip, I might actually just put a little bit of torque on it, and then I don't have to worry about it backing out, but at the same time, it's only gonna back out into the bottle. So, like I told you, on this side, you got all sorts of room for days, but this would still interfere with a passenger. So now, these things, I haven't fully figured these things out yet, but they seem pretty straightforward. I mean, you just kind of loop them through there, get them somewhat through there, do both of them, and then you can insert the bottle. Once you get both of them, I don't think there's really a right or wrong way to put this like fill lid, the spout, but I'm just gonna have it to the inside and match that, match that, loop those through. I think I'm gonna have to cut these down, and you know, because like that's way too long. So, but there you have it. That is installing an additional fuel on your Tiger 800. This will pretty well work for anyone with hard bags. And just to double check here, yeah, we're not going to interfere with the bottom, so I could take these bags off, set them down with these on, and it won't be putting any pressure on it. Right on. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know it wasn't too much of a how-to other than installing the Zega Pro base plates, but I hope it gives you a couple of ideas, options, stuff to check out when it comes to mounting an additional accessory onto your bike. Because like I said, they've got different plates that pop into these, so your options are pretty well limitless there. Just be mindful of the amount of weight that you start adding to these, because now if you're going to carry a bunch of tools in here, add 2 liters of fuel, you're going to be well over that 11-pound rating that these have, which I've had more in there and it wasn't an issue. So my advice would be not on the outsides, because when you drop your bike, where's it going to go? Right there. And having fuel cushion your fall, especially if it's on pavement and there might be sparks involved, that's not going to be a good time. If you're new to this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. At some point the snow is going to melt and we will be out riding this thing, and then hopefully this summer we will be putting those to use on a trip. Thank you for taking the time and watching.